Alright guys, let's get started with learning Elasticsearch aggregation. The first part essentially is we want to start Elasticsearch locally, so please install Elasticsearch and start. I have done that. I have Kibana, I have Elasticsearch. Now you can click on add data. By default, it comes with some sample data set. So if you click on this one, then let's go to DevTool. So there is a sample dataset that Elasticsearch come with. It's called Kibana sample dataset for e-commerce. We are going to learn about aggregation on this, essentially on this index. Okay, so the very first thing we want to do before we start anything about aggregation, before reading anything, the first thing we want to do is essentially, the first thing we want to do is essentially we want to take a look at the data, what all fields are there, and then take a look at the mapping. This is perhaps one of the most important exercise any engineer should be doing before writing any aggregation query. So let's essentially take a look at the JSON data. You have a category, you have a currency, looks like a string, customer first name, customer full name, customer gender, customer ID, looks like an integer there. Customer last name, we have phone number, which is an empty string, day of week, we have that day of the week, then you have an I, which is 0. You have a fake email address, manufacturer, which is an array, so you have that data type. Order date seems like a date time object, order ID seems like a number, integer. Then you have a products, which is a list of objects, right? You have SKU, I don't know what that is, but let's keep going down the line. You have a float, so you could perform aggregation on that as well. You have total quantity. You have a geo IP as well, which is essentially a country ISO code. You have a location there, region name, continent, city name, event. So that's a data set. Now let's take a look at the mapping. The way you can grab the mapping essentially is by saying the index name followed by underscore mapping. This should give you the mapping. I have opened everything on Elasticsearch, essentially a JSON formatter. Remember guys, you definitely wanna do this exercise. It's very, very important. So now I can try to open up, I'm gonna try to open up Notepad++. So over here, and then I'm gonna click on new one, and I'm gonna dump this mapping over here in my Notepad++. So now here, as you can see, I just wanna go over this exercise quickly. So as you can see, category is a type text, then you have a keyword. So I'm essentially just going over the mapping. Okay, so currency looks like a keyword. So essentially you want to go over all the, you want to see, okay, what all fields are there. Is it a type keyword? Is it a type text or not? So you want to go through this exercise first. So there is a lot more here, but we don't want to go over everything. So essentially I'm just taking a quick look at the mapping here. So as you can see, we have, we can take a look at the first name, last name. So I'm assuming, so customer first name, it's a text, and then you can also have a keyword, which means you can do aggregation, but we'll learn more about that. So the first thing before we start learning about aggregation is essentially make sure you have any data set. I'm using a sample e-commerce. If you don't have the data set, you can click on home button. You can click on add data, and then essentially you can click on sample data, and here I already have it, so you can click on the e-commerce data and you can install the data. I have done that. Okay, so the part one is essentially making sure you have the data. Now once you have the data, now we'll start performing aggregation. Now very important thing, we'll essentially read some definition first, go through that, understand what that means, and then try to write our aggregation queries. Okay, so first let's see and read what an aggregation. I'll try to zoom as much as possible, and then let's try to understand. OpenSearch, or Elasticsearch rather, is just for it isn't just for search. Aggregation lets you tap into OpenSearch powerful analytics engine to analyze your data and extract statistics from it. The use case of aggregation varies from analyzing data in real time to take some actions to using OpenSearch dashboard, essentially Kibana, to create visualized dashboard. OpenSearch can perform aggregation on massive datasets in milliseconds. Compared to queries aggregation that consumes more CPU cycles and memory. Aggregations on text field, and then we have a demo. Okay. By default, OpenSearch does not support aggregation on a text field, which means if a type is text, which is why, if you remember, I went through the exercise of taking a look at mapping. If it is only the type text, you cannot perform aggregation on category, but let's keep reading more. Okay. So because the text fields are tokenized, and aggregation on a text field has to reverse the tokenization process back to its original string and then formulate an aggregation based on that. This kind of operation consumes significant memory and degrades clusters performance. While you can enable aggregation on text field by setting a field data parameter to true, in the mapping and the aggregation are still based on the tokenized word are not on the raw text. We recommend keeping the raw version of the text field as a keyword field that you can aggregate on. What does that mean? I'll explain you in a simple language now. In order to perform aggregation, you have to make sure that there's a type called keyword so that you can perform. So the type has to be keyword in order to do aggregation on that. So for example, let's take a look at that. So in our e-commerce dataset that we downloaded from Kibana, we have a category. It's a type as text, and then we have a field. It's called keyword, and then type is keyword, which means if you want to do an aggregation on the category, you cannot do on directly category. It has to be category.keyword. Does that make sense? In a second, we'll take a look at the syntax. And so the structure of aggregation queries follow. So you provide size as 0. You don't want to search anything. Ags. You provide the name, the aggregation type. If you are only interested in the aggregation, the results are not not in the results query, set the size to 0, because you don't want to get, if you are just doing aggregations, please set the size to 0. Okay. In aggregation, the property, you can use aggregation if you want. You can define any number of aggregation. Each aggregation is defined by its name and its type of aggregation that OpenSearch support, essentially Elasticsearch support, right? So there are various sort of aggregation which we will take a look at it, which are matrix, bucket, and pipeline. And we are just going over the very basics about aggregation, right? So now we do understand what an aggregation is, right? Now let's write a very simple query about aggregation. So remember, on our data set, right, the first thing that I did is essentially I was taking a look at essentially all the fields that it has and the mapping. So you want to make sure that there's a type keyword. If the particular field doesn't have a type keyword, you cannot do aggregation on that, which is what we just read. All right, let's write our very first aggregation in Elasticsearch. Before we do that, I want you to download this library called Elasticsearch Query Generator version 5.0. This is a library that I have developed and officially published. I'm the author, as you can see. This library helps you to write aggregation queries much more faster. Okay, so I have installed the library, and then I'm saying from Elasticsearch Query Generator. Sorry, I know my screen is not visible, so I'm going to do this way. So from Elasticsearch Query Generator .elasticsearch Query Generator import Elasticsearch query. So what we're doing here is helper. We are creating an instance of a class Elasticsearch, setting up size as 0, bucket names, whatever you want. Okay. Then we are saying helper.add aggregation. And now remember, we want to perform aggregation on the keyword fields, right? So we saw the mapping of this e-commerce website, and we said category has, we cannot do aggregation on category, but we can do an aggregation on category.keywords because the type is keyword here, right? So then essentially I'm providing my field, type is terms, sort as descending, size as 3. And then we want to run a method called complete aggregation and run this code. This exercise file is called P1. It's going to be there on the GitHub section, so do not worry about that. Okay. Now let's grab the query and dump this on the Kibana dashboard. So I'm going to come here. Okay, so I'm pasting the query just as it is that I got from the Elasticsearch Query Generator. So as you can see here, this is saying aggregate categories. That's the, I'm giving it a name, a bucket name. Then terms, right? And then I'm saying on which field I want to do aggregation. So I'm saying I want to do an aggregation on categories.keywords. And I want to essentially order everything. I want to order the count by descending order, right? Which means the most bigger one comes from the top and then the below one. Size as 3, how many aggregations do you want? Let's run the query. After running the query, we can see that here we have men's clothing with 2,224. That means 2024 items has the category as men's clothing. Women's clothing, there are 1903, and women's shoes is 1136. We can change the number of bucket size to 10, which means you want to grab 10 items in the bucket. So now you have aggregation of 10 items. So now you can see men's shoes, women accessories, and men accessories, and much more. So this is a very basic aggregation, right? Now the next phase of this is, how do I do aggregation on multiple fields? So let's take a look at that. Now again, we gotta go to the schema. So on whatever fields you want to do aggregation, you have to make sure that those field has a type of keyword. So I can do aggregation on currency. Yes, I can do that. Then I can also do aggregation on customer first name. I could do that. Customer's full name, I can do a aggregation. Customer gender, I can do an aggregation on the gender. Customer ID, I can do that as well. Then let's see something interesting that we could do an aggregation on. So we have an event. We have a geo IP. So city name, continent name. So the location is a geo point, so we could do some geo aggregation. We'll take a look at everything, okay? So don't worry, we'll master the aggregation. Manufacturer dot keyword, we could do aggregation on that. Now let's learn how to add multiple aggregation. Back to the Python editor, as we say, now we're gonna copy this code and replicate this one more time. Now this aggregation would be manufacturer. I wanna do that on manufacturer. The field name would be manufacturer dot keyword. Type as term, sort as descending, and the size. After this, we'll call the complete aggregation method, and then we'll run the code. This should give us an aggregation query. Let's wait for the code to run. This would give you the query. Simply copy. Now head over to Kibana. Okay. Remove everything. Now let's run the query and see if this works. Okay, heading over to my aggregation, now I can see a category aggregation. Now I have a manufacturer aggregation. Low tide media, we have 1,553 documents. Elite engines, we have 1370, and ocean, this one, whatever that is, 1218. So now we essentially learn how to perform multiple aggregation. So the library will help you to write aggregation. So if you want to do multiple aggregation, remember the way you do that, and we can go over the syntax again. Let me zoom in because I know people are watching from the mobile phone. So you provide ags, categories, right? Then you provide the terms, the field name, and if you want order or how many aggregations do you want, you can have as many aggregation as you want, until the field should have the type as keyword, okay? Remember, when you're doing aggregation, put the size as 0. You can put the size as 10 or 20, but if you're just interested in aggregation, make sure to leave this as number 0. Elasticsearch has following types of aggregation. Those are metric aggregation, bucket aggregation, and pipeline aggregation. Metric aggregation essentially is calculate metrics such as sum, min, max, average on a number field. That is important, okay? Bucket aggregation, sort the query result into groups based on some criteria, right? Pipeline aggregation, pipe out one aggregation as an input to the other. Very interesting, right? So there are a lot more in aggregation too, right? So now let's take a look at one of the example from metric aggregation on how to use that. So in the data set, we have a field called categories, right? So I want to write an aggregation query where I'm saying, give me all the documents where the category is men's clothing, and give me the average total price, give me average taxful total price, right? How do you write that query? So in the bool section, in the must section, must mean it should have. Match phrase means we are trying to match a phrase called men's clothing on the category field. Then we are performing aggregation. You can name this anything, my average, you can name it literally anything. Then you have to use the word AVG, which stands for average. Then on which field you want to perform the average. So I'm saying taxful total price. After you run the query, you said, hey, go to Elasticsearch, grab all the documents with the category men's clothing and give me the average on taxful total price. So now I got 73.81 is the average taxful total price for men's clothing. Interesting, right? So now let's look at some more example on aggregate. So the other examples are, sum, min, max, and stuff like that. So now let's go to Kibana and understand more. Same example, we are going to say, okay, from all the Elasticsearch, go to men's clothing and essentially give me the minimum taxable total price for men's clothing. So if I do that, I know it's 6.9 US dollars. Then I can say the word max. This would give me the maximum. What's the maximum price in men's clothing? I want to know that. It's 2,250 US dollars. Okay. So that's mean, that's max. You can use the word AVG. That's gonna calculate the average. So I know the average taxable price. Then I can calculate the sum. Some would calculate the total sum of that, so you could do that as well. So these were the example of metric aggregation: sum, min, max, average. You can only do this on a numeric field. Okay, we took a look at the bucket aggregation. Now let's understand a little more about aggregation with some more examples. So now another type of aggregation query that we are looking at is called Cardinality, which means this essentially counts the unique value in that particular field. For example, I want to see, okay, how many total categories are there total? I want to count everything, right? So this is, I want to count all the unique categories. For example, men clothing, okay, total, how many are unique categories do I have? In this situation, you can use something called cardinality, and then you can say the field on which you want to do. So right now, by doing this, I know that there are six unique values in the category essentially. So I know men's clothing, women's. So there are total 6 of them, those that are unique. So that I have 6 unique categories field. So cardinality essentially tells you that. If you want, you can come here and read more here. A single value matrix aggregation that calculates an approximate or count of distinct value. So this essentially counts approximate of distinct value. So this is, you can use this to essentially aggregate a distinct value, right? So this is also one of the aggregation that you can do. Now we'll explore again more and more on aggregation as a. Let's take a look at the sampler in aggregation, how we can use that to improve performance during aggregation. If you are aggregating over 1 million documents, you can use the sampler aggregation to reduce the scope to a smaller sample of documents for a faster response. The sampler aggregation selects the samples by top scoring documents. The results are approximate but closely represents the distribution of the real data. The sampler aggregation significantly improves the query performance, but the estimated response are not entirely reliable. What that means is essentially, if you have massive data sets, which I'm talking about millions, right? If you do aggregation, the aggregation usually takes a long time, right? So what you can say is sampler, you're saying that, hey, from each chart, collect maximum 1,000 documents. Once you get 1,000 documents, then essentially based on the score, okay, then aggregate then do the aggregation. So this is much more faster compared to your regular aggregation. But these numbers are not because you're just saying, hey, grab all the top 1,000. These are almost similar, but not exactly same. Is what I'm trying to say. So you can use essentially, as I said, sampler in order to increase performance, as they have shown here, right? The shard size property will tell OpenSearch how many documents at most to collect from each shard. The following so essentially, as I said, once it collects the document from each shard, then it would perform the aggregation. So this is essentially a sampler in the aggregation. As said, aggregation topic is very big, man. So as I said, metric aggregation, bucket aggregation, pipeline aggregation, and then each one of them has a lot more to read, right? If I start doing every single thing, this video would be massive. So which is why I would leave the links in the description. So maybe if you want, you can check those out. But this should provide you a nice overview on Elasticsearch aggregation. So hopefully you can get started with this, right? So hopefully we saw min, max, sum, we saw single aggregation, then we did aggregation on multiple fields, right? I showed you a sampler in the aggregation, right? So we did bucket aggregation as well. Then the rest of the part is, you can add your queries, whatever you want in bool, filter, should, must not, and then you can, filter out the results. But if you have any specific needs in aggregation, do let me know in the comment section below. Maybe if I can maybe help you out if I know. If not, I'll learn and get back to you, right? So with that being said, I hope this was a useful video for anyone who just want to get started with aggregation. Hopefully this should provide you a nice insight. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Keep smiling, keep programming. See you guys.